Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn with our community shlicha, Noam Harari. As you know, we were fortunate enough to host Noah Tishby in our community last week for her book, Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth. And Noam is here today to continue the conversation that book and program started. So with that, I will turn it over to Noam. Thank you for being here.
Hi everyone, shalom. I have my notes, I have the book, I have the presentation, we're ready to go. Thank you for joining. We are here to learn from each other, and I'm sure I'll have stuff to learn today from you as well. We're gonna follow Not Teach Me program and talk about the book, but mainly it's an opportunity for us to have a little bit of a chat about Israel. Feel free to write questions in the chat, and I'll try to respond as many as I can, online or even offline. I'll try to gather them all. So I'm gonna share my screen. It's a new Zoom feature now. So we had Not Teach Me on October 5th. This is Not Teach Me and this is the book. And now it's a great opportunity for all here to say hello, shalom, and my name is Noam. I'm the Israeli Shlicha emissary here in Nashville, Tennessee, which means that I'm responsible for all the Israel programming here in our community. I grew up in the city of Modi'in, which is between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and where the Hanukkah story happened, which is a very exciting fact. I served the IDF as a social worker for soldiers who got injured or ill during their service in the army, and visited families who lost their loved ones, called Mashaki Niflaim. And before coming to Nashville, I worked in a young adult center in Modi'in, and I ran all the young adults programming in between everything else. But now I'm here, and this is the beginning of my third year, which is crazy to think. And we went through so much in the past couple of years and still going through. And somehow with that, we had some great Israel programming such as Nashir Together, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom HaZikaron, Get Connected, Coffee with Noam, Tal Heinrich, Shlichim Tour, Hebrew classes, dance classes, virtual and in-person kids and teens program, Israelis Happy Hour, and many more collaborations. And I'm looking forward to this year, so I hope we can do this more of Israel conversations more in the future. So this is about me, and I hope you can see, I think some of the people here are in the pictures. So now let's focus on our main character today, which is Not Teach Me. Not Teach Me is an Israeli-American actress, producer, writer, and activist. A Tel Aviv native, Tishby served in the Israeli army before letting the starring role on the nation's highest-rated primetime drama, Ramat Aviv Gimel. After becoming a household name and appearing in numerous TV shows, films, theater productions, and fashion campaigns, Tishby moved to Los Angeles when she sold the Israeli TV show In Treatment to HBO, which made history as the first Israeli TV show to become an American series. Tishby earned a Peabody Award and Emmy and Golden Globe nominations for her work on the show. She is the founder of Act for Israel, Israel's first online advocacy organization, and is the author of Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth. Not Tishby, if there are any Israelis here, Not Tishby is a big deal in Israel. She was on TV and fashion campaigns all over. I personally wasn't aware, unfortunately, until my work here in the community on how much she has done for Israel. And it's great to discover it now, and to see her journey is so fascinating. So we're gonna go on a journey together. And I'm just gonna make sure I shared my screen, I shared my sound. Okay, share sound. 2 years on Zoom and still share sound. Okay, So we are going to start with the first stop in her career, which is a TV show in the 90s called Ramat Aviv Gimel. And now you can see Noah Tishvi. Just let me know if you can hear it. The sound doesn't really. This is Israel in the 90s, guys. This is young Noah Tishvi. So from the 90s, we move straight to 2021, when Noah was interviewed to the show The View. I just want to make sure that it's from the beginning.
Tishby?
So I'm just going to show you like a minute from here.
Noah Tishby is an actress, producer, activist, and now a published author. She was born and raised in Tel Aviv and served 2.5 years in the Israeli army before starring in Israel's hit show, Ramat Aviv Gimel. She sold the Israeli TV show and treatment to HBO and is widely known as Israel's unofficial ambassador. Noah, welcome. I'm such a huge fan of yours, and I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very much mutual, Megan.
Well, let's get right into it. Bill Maher describes your book, Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth, as, quote, not your bubby's history book. You're not exactly what comes to mind when one imagines a stodgy old academic. What motivated you to write this book, and have you been surprised by the response?
First of all, thank you so much for that. I have been surprised by the response because this is a book that has been endorsed by Bill Maher, who's incredible, and also by Ben Shapiro, which actually leads me to believe that I was able to do quite a balanced job. The reason I wanted to write this book is because I saw how fascinated people were with Israel, how much debate it brings up, how much passion it brings up. People are excited about it and are angry about it, but a lot of the times they actually don't know the facts and they don't have the facts straight. And a lot of people came up to me throughout the years and were like, is there a book that I can read, but like something that is fun, that is relatable, that gives me all the history in a way that's easy to understand? And I realized that that book just doesn't exist. So I decided to write it.
Well, yeah, that is the reason from Noah why she decided to write the book. And I'm just gonna read a quote here. Israel, the small strip of arid land is 5,700 miles away, but remains a hot button issue and a thorny topic to debate. But while everyone seems to have a strong opinion about Israel, how many people actually knows the facts? We will dive in to talk about the book very soon. I just wanted to share my personal perspective, what the book represents to me. So let's go back. No, I'm in 10th grade. I went on a delegation to the US for the first time, and the delegation called Young Ambassadors, which I think it's a very big name for a bunch of teenagers, but let's leave it aside. I stayed with a host family in Virginia. They were great. They asked a lot of questions about Israel, and I went with their daughter to schools around Virginia Beach and talked about Israel. Basically what I'm doing now, but with much less experience and less English. So when I was there, I was shocked by the question the student asked me, and I wasn't prepared for that. Some of the questions were, does your parents choose your husband? Or how many camels are in your backyard? And these were genuine questions from students in the school. It was 2010. It wasn't like we had internet and all of that. So like as Noah says, I saw how fascinated people were with Israel. But Israel can be a complicated topic, and there wasn't a source that was easy to understand everything about the history and how Israel is now and all of that. From that delegation to my mission now, I can tell there is so much misinformation going around on the media. And sometimes it can be so frustrating and even scary at times. We're gonna dive to it later, but especially what happened in May. And like Noah, I'm surprised this book wasn't exists before. I can even share that it's actually funny and relatable, but mainly I think it's one of the best sources I found with sharing about Israel. And I just highly recommend for you to read it, no matter what your opinion is at the end. And Noah is not here to make sure I say it. I really genuinely think that. So now I want to stop for a second and see everyone's faces or closed screens. And I want to ask if so far you have any thoughts or comments about Noah, about the book, if you read the book and you want to share your perspective, and then we'll have a time to dive into the second part. But if you have any comments, if you can raise your hand, and if not, we can move on to the second part. Yes, Celia, I can see you.
Yeah. Number one, I think she was awesome in her presentation. I think she's very relatable. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned, Noam, that in Israel, she's a big deal. Everybody knows about her. But here, even when I first brought it up, people here did not know who she was. I think she's a great representative. I think the book is a wonderful source for people to read. Even for those of us who know a lot about Israel, it kind of reminds us of things that we should bring up. And so one of my things, I don't know if you're going to talk about, but I wondered, you know, I know she was here and everything. And I know her key audience is the 20-something-year-olds. I don't know whether we were able to gauge, you know, her interaction with anybody in that age group, but I would think that because of, there's something about her that would make her very appealing to young people, I would think, no matter what gender, for different reasons. And so I don't know if we have any sense of that. I know that was her goal because there's so many, and I have daughters in their 20s, and, you know, they deal with, they don't want to even look at things on the, you know, the social media. And I know she advised against some of that, fighting things on there. But I wonder, do we have a sense from her visit here or what we're going to do in the future? Do we have any, I think there's one 20-year-old or something who asked a question at the event, but do we have a sense of what, what that demographic, what, you know, how they, did they have a chance to, were there very, very many who attended, or, you know, what might be the plan with them and using the information or using the book, using, you know, whether she can come here again would be great, or at least I have a Zoom meeting with her. I just think that would be, she's just one of those people who I think would be very, like you said, an ambassador. I mean, I just think that she just, the way that she presents is, you know, down to earth, some humor, you know, some sarcasm, some everything. So,
and I think that's exactly the point. And I think she brings with this mission here, I've seen so many different lectures about Israel, and I think she brings something very, very fresh and a new take on explaining the history and the complicity of what Israel is and what Zionism is, and the whole connection with Palestine. And I think she brought a very, very refreshing take that really people, young adults, can really connect to, and she's really cool just in general. So I think she has so much potential to connect and engage people with the book and with the conversation about Israel. I don't know what the demographic was exactly on the call. I know we had about 209 views on YouTube, and I don't know how with the numbers exactly, but it's a great question, and we can continue talking about it after that. After that part, I'm here to stay and answer questions. Any other thoughts, feelings?
Whoever's on screen as Shalom, I believe, had a question.
Yes.
Hi, I think that was me. It's Batsheva.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Shalom, nice to see you. I know Deborah too. I just thought it was a very, very good program. I think Noah's really good for a younger audience because she was so groovy, so I found some of the lingo kind of unnecessary for me and a little condescending, but it's immaterial. It's really immaterial. She's great for young people. And I just wanted to say that, we've had a lot of programs over the years, the time that I've been in Nashville, where there's some sense of trying to explain to people and elucidate on the complexity and what it's really like in Israel, and to explain to Jews, because that I travel a lot and Jews don't know. And I travel a lot in the South, Jews do not know. And we're so horribly, obscenely misrepresented in the press that it's a real uphill battle. So I thought she's about the first person in a contemporary fashion that I thought addressed specifically what the status quo is. And I thought she was particularly well suited to that because of the time she spent in LA. If she understands how the television industry works there, then that gives her a level of sophistication that other speakers, who are great, who are experts, couldn't address. And it just saddens me about the Sochnut or whatever, that we just don't, and I know everybody's got their hands full, they've got enough to deal with, but we need this so badly because, as has been almost all my adult life, we are so losing the public relations war, and we've been losing it for decades. And I've addressed this with umpteen leaders before, including speakers we've had come to Nashville. And I think almost kind of what your experience was, Noah, where Noah, that you went to, when you first came when you were a teenager, and you saw the kind of dumb questions people were asking. The level of ignorance is stunning. So we in North America and in the Galut in general, we need to do a much better job, and we've known that for ages. And it always bothered me, and I'll stop here. It's always bothered me that we have so many people in public relations and advertising and film and television. Those are our people. We do run the industry, and that we have failed so spectacularly to alter or to correct the message that people get about Israel. So I thought it was great to have her. I found her a little too youthful for me, but whatever. She's great for a young audience. That's all. It was more like comments than questions.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
That's what I asked for, and thank you for that. I agree that the hands are full most of the times, because I read the news every morning, and something happens every day, and you try to focus on what's happening, on what will happen, or what happened in the past, on how it did affect us. It's just a whole thing. And with explaining and talking about Israel, I mean, that is my job. But when you want to talk to people, I think not a lot of us, some people don't have scared to talk about it with not enough background or not enough information. And I think that's what the book represents. And I do think she was really cool and funky, as you said. I do think the book brings something a bit more structured and mature. I don't know if you read it, but I'm reading it now and I'm really enjoying it. Okay, so yeah,
it's Felicia.
Hello.
Hi. I'm just wondering, has she hooked up with Hillel, or has anyone helped her kind of make that connection, because if her appeal is so strong to that population and our issue is so great on college campuses, wouldn't she really be an effective voice to help with that message?
100%. And we're definitely working on that. And I'd be glad to keep you posted on how is it gonna work out. And I'm collaborating with the Shlichat in Hillel. Her name is Leital, and we're gonna work something out so they can see the program as well.
But
Thank you.
Felicia, just to follow up on that, she has worked, she has been invited and has spoken at campuses around the country. We did, of course, invite all of the local Hillel students to join us. We had a good number of young adults. I don't believe we had any Hillel students, but the plan is for Noam to work with the Shlicha on Vanderbilt campus to show the recording and do a program for the students. So we will be bringing it to Vanderbilt, even though most of their students did not come to the event, but there is interest in the book and the conversation. So Noam will be working with the Shlicha at Vanderbilt to make that happen locally, but Noah has been speaking on campuses.
I think that's very exciting, very exciting.
Well, thank you. Now, I mean, I just want to have a conversation, and I think we have a good number to have more of an open conversation. Sorry, I took some quotes from the book, and I want us to discuss about them and hear from everybody what you think, your opinion about them. Let's try to respect each other. I mean, I know the people here, you're great, but let's try to respect each other's opinions. And if you want to talk about the book, about the topics beyond that, I'm here. If you want to get together on Zoom or in person, I will put my email here after. Please feel free, even people on YouTube, feel free to reach out. I can't wait to talk to you individually as well. It was hard to choose the quotes, not gonna lie. I talked about it with Deborah yesterday. I basically marked every page. So I'm just gonna show a little bit and we can talk about it together. So the first quote is, Israel's PR problem, we're about to turn into existential threat. And my question is, what do you think Noam meant by that? If you can raise your hand or just mark us if you wanna talk, say something about it. Yes, I'm gonna ask to unmute.
Unmuted. Is that me you're calling on, dear?
Yeah.
Hi. So not to repeat myself, but this has been a thing of mine, and I'm sure a lot of people, honestly, since the 20s, since I was in my 20s, and I had a television show in Toronto, of which I was the host and producer, a Jewish show not on cable, on regular TV. And at that time, I used to get from the Israeli consulate in Toronto, I used to get videotapes, little short stories, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, about life in Israel that I was able to roll in my show. And I knew at the time that in the Toronto, Southern Ontario landscape, television landscape, I was probably the only source of any kind of balanced information that was coming to people on television about Israel. And they stopped it at some point. And I don't know why, but I begged them, please send me more, because it's beneficial. So I think television is a great medium. And it's also, I think what she's saying is we are facing an existential threat, because I think, I'll keep this short, just stop me when you need to, that younger people coming up are seeing a great divide. And they're seeing it, I think, in much more black and white terms than were seen before. I would say, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I think it's become much more stark. It's in a black and white issue, in a black and white way. So I think it's a problem. And I'll give you a quick example, then I'll stop. But I do think it's a very big problem, particularly on the left. And I'm on the left. And it's always been a problem on the left. It's a problem in the feminist movement. The feminist movement will not, at large, does not look at Israel. They just don't. They're very hostile towards it, and it's been a long problem. On television right now, on WPLN, on the not WPLN, on the PBS affiliate here in Nashville, there's a, they run fillers. If a show comes up too short, there's little Nashville fillers that are on to fill like a 2-minute time slot. So there's a guy running they're running one at the moment for an Arab restaurant in Nashville, which is very nice that they're doing. The entire thing was like this undercutting of Israel. All he kept saying was, I'm from Palestine, but I can't go to Palestine. I can't travel there. I'm not allowed. And he talked about trying to keep the cuisine of his people alive, but he's not allowed to go there. And then they put up a picture from the 6-Day War with no context, no explanation, nothing, just a voiceover that said something to the effect of, please forgive me, I may not be quoting this correctly, but the message was clear. When the Arab-Israeli war started, then this thing happened. And you came out of the little short, the little 2-minute short, believing that Israel had thrown him out of his country, that he was not allowed to go back there.
Yeah, a lot of misinformation.
It was suddenly very hostile, and I mean to go after them, and I will. I have to call them and get a hold of the it's not a PSA, it's a little promotional short, but that's a problem. And I've got, when the 2016 election was on, and one of the local stations, actually all the local stations, were running an ad with a picture of Hillary Clinton, a Jewish star that looked like a sheriff star, but it was a Magen David, and dollar signs. And I went after every single network. I went after all 3 networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. And I went after the people who run the advertising for the Republican Party. I got them, and they listened. This particular restaurant thing, it's got to go. It's bad, and that's the kind of thing.
As you said, yes, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and these are some of the examples. I would like to hear one more person, maybe someone that hasn't spoke yet. But this was great points and great examples. Maybe if you saw any example, how did it make you feel? Were you frustrated? Were you angry? Were you? That's another question as well. But yeah, Israel has. I think we're moving forward. We're learning things. Even on the book, Noah explains on how she helped, and with the organization she started. Social media is a big place for people to consume information. So this is one of the things that they're working on, and I hope we can, especially after what happened in May in Israel, to improve our, we call it hasbara, explaining skills in the media. Okay, next one. I heard some people call Israel an apartheid state, which is also absurd when you know that the 3rd largest political party in Israel is an Arab party. And I'm just going to read it. The definition of apartheid refers to a political system where people are clearly divided based on race, gender, class, or other such factors. Thoughts, feelings? Let's try to keep it short so more people can answer and we can go through more quotes. But any thoughts about that? Yes, Celia.
Well, I think one thing that's been disturbing throughout this process is how people pick up these words like apartheid, which has such negative connotations, and they stick all these things on Israel, like the genocide, the apartheid, and all that. And these things catch on. I know they had like the apartheid wall in university campuses, and we tried to fight that. And I guess just listening to what everybody's saying and listening to what like Batsheva said and whatever, there are a lot of groups that are working to fight this. And of course, that's what this is about. And I think the thought that there are a lot of people like Batsheva talked about who happen to be Jews who are who are experts in PR. I don't know if we could have any other ideas from different people as to how to kind of erase this, but these things have become unquestioned. I mean, people just think Israel's apartheid. They just think Israel's guilty of genocide. I mean, they throw out the worst terms and they stick, although they're not based on fact. And I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I just, it is so disturbing. It's, when, I just believe I always valued, truthfulness, honesty, and all that. And it just goes against my grain that is able to happen. So I guess there are many groups that are working on combating that, but those kinds of things are all dangerous for Israel and for Jews in this country, as we've seen. And there have been a lot of implications for, for young people, for others.
If you can raise your hand, maybe on the, reactions, or just if you're on screen, if you saw on the media that some sort of a post that Israel is apartheid. If you saw it on Facebook or somewhere in the internet, or heard it from a person from a first encounter.
It's Felicia.
Yes.
This is kind of a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
We do such a good job of sharing our tsuras with each other. We wring our hands, we say it's terrible, but there are social commentators who really are effective spokesmen for Israel in the American social media process. And I'm just wondering if one of the things we can't do, because I think it comes down to people care about it, but how badly do they care about it? Would they go searching for someone who could provide accurate information from them? Would they search social media? But maybe we can help them with 3 or 4 accurate, impactful spokespeople where they can refer back to their blogs, or they can refer to their social commentary.
Yeah.
So that little by little, people start getting enough information so that when they're confronted with these things, they don't just tell other Jews, but they have enough information to tell somebody else that they're wrong.
Yeah, I appreciate, I think what's great about this group, that we're not just expressing how we feel or how we think, we also, I'm writing on taking action, which it's very admirable. And we all come in a standing point that not everybody thinks the same. And there are people who still think that Israel is apartheid. And it's something that we need to communicate about it.
But my point is that our fellow Jewish community members know it's wrong, but they don't know what to say. And they don't know where to go to find the information to say different.
Felicia, so one of the things that we have done is we've created a resource page. Of course, it's somewhat self-selective. Only people who care enough to go look at it will go to look at it. But we have created that research page with good information so that people who want to have a little bit more clarity in order to engage in those conversations can get it. We've also shared the various sources that Noah mentioned in her event itself. At the end, at one point in the event itself, she mentioned the sources that she uses to keep up to date, and we have shared that. It's obviously a difficult process because only people who are interested will look. And so how you get it to the people on the fringes is the real challenge.
Yeah.
But I will also say that we are and no one will probably get to this, but we are planning a program in the spring for the high school seniors to prepare them before they head off to campus, to give them some of this terminology, to sort of prepare them for what they may see when they get there and how they can more effectively respond.
Yes.
So I think what I would say is I see that in the weekly blast, but it's way down, below. Here's your chance to make bagels or whatever else. So maybe its placement needs to be much higher. Maybe it needs to be more eye-catching so that people will grab it. Maybe it's worth sending out some kind of postcard that has a catchy phrase to capture people's attention. And maybe it's worth having an article in the Observer about it so that, you can spread as much opportunity for people to access this stuff. I know you've put in the hard work, but
yeah. And we're writing all the ideas, and we can, we're meeting very soon. We're meeting next Friday, Felicia. So I would love to round down the ideas and actually act on them and see what we can do. It's all about engagement, and even in events like last night, there was a movie for NowGen, the young adult group. It was an Israeli movie, and it talks about a lot of the conflicts. These are events that cause the engagement about Israel. I just want to focus back, and we have a few more quotes that I personally think are very interesting. Okay. I know I refer. Very design, free Hamas, free Gaza from Hamas, because even though I'm pro-Israel, I'm also pro-Palestine, just anti-Hamas, a terrorist organization with aims to annihilate Israel and which uses international aid money to build attack tunnels instead of schools and hospitals. This is all quotes from the book. I know Noam is a similar names. I just want to focus us on the book, and I want to hear what you guys think about it. If people that are here on the call that haven't shared yet, it's a safe space. Everybody's saying in programs, it's a safe space when we talk about Israel, but please feel free. This is such a good group. What did it make you feel? What do you think about this approach? Yes.
If nobody else is going to say something, I think things like that might be good to use. People don't understand what that means as a counter.
What?
I mean, I think that would be a counter to what the negative propaganda. People don't understand, like with the last conflict in Israel, people really didn't get, they're siding with Hamas. If they're on the other side, they don't get what Hamas is. And I think maybe, look, this is something that's been I've been very Israel advocacy, something I've been involved with for a long time. A lot of people, Jewish people and others, just don't know the facts anyway. But I think people need to know that Hamas, they're not good guys. And I think having various things out there that are catchy, they talk about apartheid, whatever, we can say something like that and other phrases that could be catchy. It also reminds me of some things that Noah talked about when you talk about all the things that Israel's done. If that can fit in somewhere, whether it's technology, whether it's rescuing people all over, a lot of people have no idea. We use that in our when we did Israeli business at Ravenwood High School and in various parts of Nashville. I think that was very interesting to people. She talked about that as an approach, both helping people understand, Hamas is not, they're not friends of other Palestinians, they don't treat them well, things like that. There may be others if people brainstorm that can be used, but we need our weapons.
I want to hear from more. I see Avi here. Thank you, Celia.
Yeah, and I really a fascinating conversation. And I just as an aside, I was delighted with her. I thought she was a great personality. She resonated with me, not so maybe I'm just a teenager at heart, but I thought what her approach and her honesty was really refreshing. She said a couple things that connect the three questions you asked today, the three quotes. She talked about a bit about occupation can't go on forever, that there has to be something ahead that's better than the current status of occupying the West Bank. And I see your questions being connected. What's the existential threat that we're posed with today? The word apartheid just kills me, like it does all of you. Hate that Israel is referred to that way. But there's some realities on the ground, and she referred to them. There's some treatment issues of how Israel treats the Palestinians in the West Bank that have become subject to criticism from the rest of the world. Israel is not apartheid, but Israel legitimately can be looked at for its unfair treatment of Palestinians within Israel, which has led to a lot of the uprising. So Israel's not avoid of the criticism. It's unfortunate that in Gaza, the war, we get hit by all these rockets, but then we get attacked for destroying infrastructure in Gaza in response. I mean, that's whole part of the existential threat is continued occupation, continued poor treatment of Palestinians within Israel will continue to get our young people to question the Israel we grew up with and loved. And that to me is the biggest existential threat.
I will continue you. I think it's great you brought it up. Continue you. I continue what you said. It sounds better English. I think, in my opinion, and Noah said it about at her talk the other night about the young generation experiencing Israel. Most of them went to Birthright and had the camels and the Dead Sea, and it is a beautiful country. I lived there my entire life, but I plan to say it at the end. But I think a part of the conversation is to say, okay, we need to learn the facts, but also it's okay to criticize some of the things, and that's okay to have different opinions and talk about them, as long as we don't use misinformation. I have some criticism about my own country, like people have on their own countries, and that's okay. And I think a part of it is just be, as you are, very involved, very curious, wants to learn, wants to understand the source of what people are saying. And that's, I think, what Noah did in the book, but just in general, what I do here. And it comes a lot with the young generation. They just go to campus and then been thrown in so much information, plus school, plus like social stuff. And I don't know how I would have dealt with it. I think it's a lot. So to bring it back, I just think it's okay to say Israel is not perfect. That's okay. We're not perfect. We're not here to talk about how many camels I have in my backyard or whatever, how beautiful is the Hadera Ironis. We're here to have a conversation. So I appreciate you bringing it up, and it needs to be in the conversation as well. Yes. Oh, sorry, you need to unmute. I cannot hear you, Avi.
Is that me?
Yesterday, I read an article or heard a podcast.
I will come back to you.
The Hartman Institute, about the concern that the moral center of Israel will continue to be challenged and this is coming from the Israelis, this is their moral center is being challenged, the more they struggle with how to deal with the Palestinians, and that the country itself is facing that. Well, we're doing that here. I mean, we have two political parties that are diametrically opposed. Many of us think there's a moral decadence in the opposition party, and that our young people are being faced with that. It's not dissimilar here, but Israel is being asked the moral challenge in Israel of how do we continue to be who we are while what is happening just across the green line is one that's affecting the conversation in Israel, and that's pretty serious. And I would encourage people to listen to. I think Bennett and Lapid are onto something, because they're kind of going towards the direction of, if we can't be at the table, let's shrink the conflict. Let's try and treat people with more dignity. Let's try and let them visit each other without barriers that keep them from traveling. I think Israel's on a right track right now in shrinking the conflict. I don't know if we'll ever get peace talks in our lifetime, but we sure can do a better job. Israel could do a better job. And we in this country could do a better job with the people we mistreat. So we're not isolated from that.
It's a lot, you're right, it's a lot of complicity. And I think it just keeps the conversation interesting. But it is unfortunate. But Eva, did you want to add something? And then I'll do a little,
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your comments, Avi, for your comments too. I was just going to say that one of the reasons that we can't get a fair message and representation about Israel out, for instance, about Gaza and Hamas specifically, is that the media, and I'm speaking from experience here, they will not run the story, because the current temperature in news media, it's based on conflict. Conflict brings viewers and keeps viewers engaged, and that's why advertisers advertise. The media in North America is a commercial medium. So the ideas that we have about accuracy and stories and fairness and objectivity, I'm sorry, they don't apply, and they particularly don't apply as far as Israel is concerned. You basically cannot go to executive news directors and media corporate heads and say, you're not doing a fair job in the way you portray Israel. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Look at how they treat their own people. Israel's just trying to defend itself. Look at Israel's history. We're surrounded by people who want to wipe us off the mat. They won't run the story. They will not run the story. So that's kind of a larger issue. It's a real problem.
Yes, I agree, and it's a lot due to the media, not just in Israel aspect. But I want to bring us back. I want to read last quote and just wrap it up. But before I do that, I love this conversation. I think we can dive in more and more. So if we want to build it up as a series, something, maybe we can try to do another Zoom, maybe in person, whatever feels comfortable. I want to dive more and more to specific topics so we can make the conversation more broad. But it's a great start. I can tell you personally that I'm only in page 69, and I can write 69 pages on how many new things I've learned about the country I grew up in. And I said, okay, this is my job. I did it for 2 years. It's great. Like I was just, it's a fun read to just prove that I know a lot about Israel. I don't. And I said it to my friends as well in Israel. You have to read this. And not because it's not Tishbi, it's because I was so excited that I now can say here. It shows from history and how we can deal with topics now. So yeah, I love this conversation, and if we can, we'll plan another one. And if there's any topics that you want to focus on specifically, stuff that you want to learn more about, we can learn about it together. I just want to read the there's such a good one in the middle, but I want to keep it short and sweet, so we'll have sweet, quote unquote. Yeah, we're talking about difficult situation, but a human, sorry, it is not similar to their of their nation. I just want it to be wanted, accepted, loved. Everybody wants the same, to be wanted, accepted. Oh, it comes here twice. It's not the actual quote. Every nation wants the same as well. Israel wants to be accepted. She wants the legitimization and normalization of international relations, and she will not take anything short of that. I will send you the actual quote, and I hope I said all the words correctly. I'm trying, but I will send you the quote. I wanted to sum up the discussion with that, and I think this is my mission. I think I'm here to talk about Israel, to bring up the conversation. And today I read more of the book, and she even wrote, defining yourself as Zionist doesn't mean that you're supporting each and every action of Israeli government with eyes wide shut. I think it's great to keep learning, keep engaging people, engage your friends, your neighbors, Jewish, not Jewish. It's so important, and I'm happy this book exists. On the 7th grade, most Israeli students have a work they need to make, like a family tree. It's a big project, and it takes a lot of research. And hearing my grandparents talk about their experience coming to Israel from Russia and Romania with nothing, or getting kicked out of Egypt because they were Jewish, makes me emotional until this day. Therefore, my mission here is very important to me, because I believe Israel is the most misunderstood country on earth, and I will dedicate my time here to talk about those topics as much as I can. So I thank you for joining, and I will put my email in the chat if you want to connect with me in person or get together. If you have ideas for our next Israel discussion, if you want to focus on a certain topic.
While Noam's doing that, I just want to mention a couple of things. One, just so you know, while obviously sharing information through Observer, through emails, whatever, that will catch a certain demographic and a certain generation. It won't get everybody. And I just want to let you all know how much work Noam has done engaging people to people in our community. And that maybe doesn't always get seen well by everybody because it's done on a personal level, but it has been remarkable to me how much engagement Noam has done. And as I always tell her, she's a living bridge. Anytime she meets with a young adult, that is bringing Israel to them in a lively way. Lisa, you are welcome. We're glad you could join us. So Noam has done tremendous Israel work, that maybe you haven't seen. That doesn't mean it's not being done, because she does it in a personal way, showing up to events, meeting. I don't think there's a young adult in town who hasn't met Noam at some point. So she is doing an incredible job of bringing Israel to life on a personal level with our young adults. That said, I will also let you know that we sold out of the first round of books that we had at the event. We have ordered more. So if anybody would like, those books are due in the next week or so. So you can message me if you'd like me to set aside a copy for you. As I said, we're going to be planning a program for our high school seniors on preparing them for campus and what they may see related to Israel when they get to campus. Also, for next week, our guest next week is Bob Scott, who is the field director for CUFI, Christians United for Israel. So it will also be a different variation on the theme of Israel engagement for next week if you want to join us again. And I'll leave anyone else has a final comment, or for Noam to make her final comments.
Well, I think I wrote notes in my notebook here, and I would love to keep talking. So let's have another conversation sometime soon. And I put my email. Please feel free. It's my third year. We're basically like a part of the community. So I would love to get together. Bye, everyone. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you all.